That's what the universe is saying to us. That's what God is saying to us. That's what Source is saying to us. That's what the all that is saying to us. Good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How's everybody doing? Beautiful, beautiful. So good to see you all. So good to see you all. I'm excited about the message today, as always. And for those who were here or not here last week, the topic that we took was the main event. And I used a quote from Abraham that says that the main event has never been the manifestation. It has always been how you feel in the moment. And we talked about the idea that we think that the main event is getting the relationship, getting the car, getting the job, getting the career change, getting the money. But actually the main event is how you feel. The main event is joy itself. It is the ease that you feel, and you can cultivate that feeling now. And as you cultivate that feeling now, the universe responds to that feeling, attracting the very things that you want: the wealth, the health, the relationships, whatever it may be, the new transportation. I hope for those who weren't here, you go back and check that out. But I want to dig straight into where we are today. Well, the topic, as I shared, is illusions end. And last year, this time is when this topic came to me, because I read one of this week's lessons in A Course in Miracles. Lesson 224 says this: "My true identity is so secure, so lofty, sinless, glorious, and great, wholly beneficent, and free from guilt, that heaven looks to it to give it light. It lights the world as well. It is the gift my Father gave to me, the one as well I give the world. There is no gift but this that can either be given or received. This is reality, and only this. This is illusion's end. It is the truth." This is illusion's end. I like that. The idea that our identity is so secure, lofty, sinless, glorious, great, beneficent, and free from guilt. This is the truth. This is the only reality. Anything else is an illusion. And so what I want to talk about is coming to illusion's end, because the thing I love about illusions is that they all have an end. No matter how grand they may have painted the picture of us being limited, or how grand they may have painted the picture that we're not worthy, or how grand they may have painted the picture that because of the circumstances of our birth, or who our mother or father is or is not, that there's something wrong with us, illusion always has an end, and that's what we want to come to today. But before I get deeper into that, we've had an interesting week in the news. We've had a very interesting week in the news. There's lots of stuff happening all over this country. In particular, this week, if you just Google unarmed black man killed, it pulls up story after story after story after story. There was an article in Mother Jones. The title was "4 Unarmed Black Men Have Been Killed by Police in the Last Month." There was an addendum to that story a few days later that it's actually 5 unarmed black men have been killed by police in the last month. We know Eric Garner in Staten Island. In Beaver Creek, Ohio, there's John Crawford. In Los Angeles, California, there was Ezell Ford. In Victorville, California, there was Dante Parker. And of course, in Ferguson, Missouri, there's Michael Brown. Now, we know this is not actually a new story. For us here in New York, we still know and we hear the name ring out, Amadou Diallo. In New York, we hear the name ring out still, Sean Bell. And of course, in California, and it was depicted in a powerful, heart-wrenching movie, Fruitvale, Oscar Grant. 5 unarmed black men have been killed by police in the last month. Many, countless, nameless, faceless black men have been killed. Unarmed black men have been killed by police in this country. And again, I say it's not a new occurrence. Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, Oscar Grant, the list and the names go on. I was reminded that when we look at the work of Martin Luther King or the work of Malcolm X, they spoke out many, many times on many occasions about police violence, about the treatment of black men in particular, but black people in general by police. So we know that this is nothing new. And as I thought about that, I was reminded of 2 messages that I preached in the past. One was preached last summer, last July, "All is Mine." And this message came the day after, the Sunday after we got the verdict in the George Zimmerman case, late Saturday night. And I preached the message, "All is Mine." And so I'm offering to you as I'm sharing this message today that you go back to that message because it's relevant to where we are today. Additionally, earlier this year, in March, I preached a message, Green Eggs and Ham, in the Master Your Universe series. That message also, I encourage you to, at some point this week, go back to, because I think it will help you as you're hearing these words today. So again, a lot has happened in the news, and it's been very unsettling for a lot of people, no matter who you are, no matter where you were born or what your ethnicity is. None of that matters, because everyone seems to really be shaken up or bothered or disturbed in some way by what has happened. And so there's been a response. After what took place in Ferguson, there was a response. There were protests. And what I've heard, I haven't really been following it that closely, but I've been told and seen some that the protests became violent. Not violent on the side of the protesters, but actually the police used what we would call military force against innocents. That then, of course, spawned other protests. My daughter Malcolm and I were in Union Square the other night, Thursday night, and I saw that there were a sea of people out in response to what the police did in Ferguson. Interesting. And what I want to offer today, although this may not be easy to hear, what I want to offer today is that there's a reason why the response has been what it has been. And there's a reason why, unfortunately, the responses on the side of the protesters or the side of the police actually will avail nothing. And it's time for us to begin to look at the situation differently. It's time for us to come to the end of illusions and begin to act and think and operate from reality. Now, what I find is interesting is that the response to what took place, whether we go back to Trayvon Martin, whether we come back here to the present, to the situation in Ferguson, is that the response is to go out and protest. That's what everybody knows how to do, right? And that's what people have been doing down through the years, with some positive results and some not so positive results. And I was reminded of the definition of insanity. We know the definition of insanity, yes? It says that the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again, expecting a different result. But what we found, if we look through history, and I'm a student of history, I love history, right? If we look at the history, we see that although many have been doing the same things over and over again, responding in protest, and as they respond in protest, if we're in the 60s, there were police dogs, there were fire hoses. Today it's military rifles and military grade equipment. We find that we get the same response. And what we understand, and as I've spoken to in the previous messages that I referenced, we understand that actually life is really energetic. That there's something energetic that's going on here, right? That it's not really about what we're doing. There's nothing wrong with protesting. I know that every protester that has been out on those streets has been well-intentioned. I know that every time I've been out in the streets in protest, I was well-intentioned, but I recognize that in those moments when I was going out, I wasn't paying attention to the energetic thing that was going on. And so what's interesting to me is that when we understand energy, when we understand that everything is vibration, we understand that I cannot vibrate at the level of anger. I cannot vibrate at the level of injustice. I cannot vibrate at the level of somebody is doing something wrong to me and get the results that I want. The results that I want are freedom. The results that I want are ease. The results that I want is peace in the streets. The results that I want is no killing. But I cannot get there from there. That's what Abraham says all the time. You can't get there from there. Now, in the Green Eggs and Ham message, what I use is the example of a musical instrument. I had Frank play a C on the keyboard. And then I had him play a D, which are right next to each other. And what's interesting about that, when you play those two next to each other, they don't sound good. You hear the disharmony, right? You hear the disharmony. And the reason why that's important is because it's an audible example of what is true. Another way we could look at it is if you're tuned to a country western station, but you want to hear hip hop, you cannot, you can talk all you want. You can protest all you want about why this country western station is not what you want to hear, and you would rather hear hip hop, and you would rather be tuned to Hot 97. You can talk all you want. You can beg your leaders and legislators to change the laws around this radio station. You will not get a different station until you turn your tuner. It is an example of what is true of us because we are energetic beings. We are vibratory beings. And so what I understand, again, while the protests are well-intentioned and I know what their desire is, you cannot get there from there. You cannot be in the place of anger. You cannot be in the place of thinking that something has been done wrong to you or that there is injustice and get justice. They live on two different stations. Interesting. And again, why do I say that? Because we understand, as we're looking at these principles from a metaphysical standpoint, last week we talked about the principle of vibration. The principle of vibration in the Kybalion says this very simply. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. But we got to add something to that. The first principle is the most important. The all is mind, the universe is mental, right? And why is this important? Because again, at any point that we're operating, not recognizing and remember that we're always really operating from mind, that the universe is mental, and that everything that's actually taking place, whatever we see or experience here, was first created and conceived in mind, was created and conceived in the realm that we cannot see. I would call that the realm of cause. And so when we understand that, we actually have to go to a deeper level and look at the very principle of cause and effect. And I want to share with you what the Kybalion says about the principle of cause and effect, or the principle of causation. It says this: every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. The masses of people are carried along obedient to environment, the wills and desires of others stronger than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes, moving them about like pawns on the chessboard of life. But the masters, rising to the plane above, dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become movers instead of pawns. They help to play the game of life instead of being played and moved about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The masters obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is condensed a wealth of hermetic knowledge. Let him read who can. So why is this interesting, and how does this apply to where we are and thinking about what's happening in our world and how we can respond? Well, you have to make a choice. Do you want to be, as it says here, do you want to be movers, or do you want to be pawns? Do you want to be causers, or do you want to be the effects? Because again, what we have to realize that everything that took place, all that took place and however it took place between the police officer and Michael Brown was an effect, right? We have not talked about or looked at the causes yet. And so the response in protesting, the response in marching was simply still living and operating in the world of effects. Now here's another way to look at it. I love this example. If you have a mirror, your reflection on the mirror is your effect. And now, if you saw something was wrong as you're looking at your reflection, ladies, if your lipstick was smudged, or brothers, if you needed to touch up your beard or your mustache or whatever it was, right? You need to touch up your hair. Would you touch the mirror to make that change? No, you wouldn't. Because you recognize that the mirror is just the effect. You have to go to the cause in order to make the change. But we've been taught, because we've seen it over and over again, we've been living this insane life of continuing to do the same things that we've seen done over and over again, and essentially protesting in the way that it's being done currently is just like trying to touch the mirror to change something, not recognizing and remembering that the mirror is just the reflection, that the mirror is just the effect. But it's interesting because we think about, well, Pastor Greg, what about, Martin Luther King and the Montgomery bus boycott? And, they affected powerful change. And I think what we have to remember is we have to look back. As I said, I'm a student of history, and we have to actually look back at how those movements took place, right? Now, first, the thing that's most important is to recognize and understand that Martin Luther King was inspired and influenced by Gandhi, right? And one of the important things to recognize about the movement that Gandhi created in India was that it was essentially a spiritual movement. That it was essentially rooted in this idea, as we say in this country, that freedom is an inalienable right? That by virtue of us being here, we're free, right? That's a spiritual idea. That's not a governmental idea. That's not a religious idea. That's an idea that by virtue of who I am free. And I have rights as a human being. It was also rooted in the idea, as nonviolence was in the very center, at the very heart of the movement of Gandhi, it was rooted in love. It was rooted in the idea that love is the most universal and powerful force above all else, above tanks, above guns, above fighting, right? And so for that reason, everyone could not get with what Gandhi was doing or teaching, because it took a spiritual understanding of what was going on in order to stand in nonviolence, right? So similarly, we have Martin Luther King, who was influenced by Gandhi. And what we must understand is that this was also a spiritual movement. If you look at the writings and the teachings of Martin Luther King, he's constantly talking about this force of love, the spiritual idea of love, right? But more importantly, when we look at how the people prepared, particularly as we look with the Montgomery bus boycott, there was preparation, not just in planning, not just in we're going to go out and march, not just we're going to go out and boycott, but there was a lot of pre-planning that went on, and that started with prayer. That started with being rooted and grounded in this idea of love being the most powerful force on the universe. And regardless of what's going on outside of me, I know that the love in me can conquer all. Again, for that reason, everybody could not rock with Dr. King. For that reason, everybody did not participate in the nonviolent movement that started in Montgomery and mushroomed out throughout the country. And it's interesting because, again, as we look at the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, what I find interesting is that that boycott lasted for a year. And again, while we have the lovely story of Rosa Parks and she refused to move, from the bus, that wasn't sort of just a random moment in time that happened, right? There was a lot of conversation, there was a lot of planning, there was conversations about who's the person that would do it and when would be the right time to do this. So it could have easily been someone else that made that choice, because she was part of a team of people that were willing to make that choice, right? And so we understand that there was planning behind that. And again, the force of love was there, because as we look at it, the fact that the boycott took a year, that means that people who depended on riding the bus to get to and from work, to get there, to do whatever they had to do throughout the week, they did not ride the bus, public transportation, for a year. Okay, so if they didn't ride public transportation for a year, that means that people had to carpool. That means that people had to walk together. That means that strangers gave strangers rides. That means that people that didn't know each other all of a sudden became friends, got to know each other through this boycott, through this demonstration. That means that the power of love had to be at the forefront before anything else, right? That means that the power that we're unified, that we're one, that there's some greater force, some greater thing going on, had to be there present in each and every one of them. And again, everybody could not do it. Everybody wasn't willing to do it. I love, if you've seen the movie The Butler, there's a powerful scene there where they're showing the preparation before they go into the lunch counters, right? That it wasn't just, we believe in freedom, and so we're going to stand firm in anger and sit here at this lunch counter. There was preparation. And there was spiritual preparation. If you listen to the words of Andrew Young and John Lewis, they talk about the fact that they would sit. I'm remembering Andrew Young talking about the second time they walked over Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I'm happy that I was able to take that journey and take that walk. It's so powerful. Just to go down there in Montgomery, Alabama, and just walk and just stand on the soil. I feel like the ground speaks, because there's so much that took place there. But he talks about when they kneeled and sat down in prayer in front of the police and those that were willing and trying to attack them or stop them. There was a spiritual force. There was something that took place that was beyond anything that you could really articulate. It was beyond what we know to be true in the physical world, because they were operating from the place of cause, not the place of effects. And so I was reminded of a quote from Joel Goldsmith. I called his name earlier, and there's a book that I love. Hopefully we'll get to teach on it, The Infinite Way. In the chapter called Our Real Existence, he says this. He says, in healing work, we must turn from the structural universe which we see. We remember that we are not called to heal it, change it, alter it, correct it, or save it. we are first of all to realize that it exists only as illusion, as the false sense of life. From this vantage point in consciousness, we behold through spiritual sense the house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. And so what this means is that if we're going to come to illusions if we want to make changes in our lives, if we want to make changes in our world, recognizing that actually everything that happens outside of us is an effect. Everything that happens outside of us is an illusion. Everything that happens outside of us can be changed. We must recognize who we are in order to change it. It's an interesting way to think about life because, again, we think in this physical world, we think if something is wrong that we deem or judge to be wrong outside of us, we must go out and do something about it, right? We must physically change it. But we recognize that if you had a mirror in your hand, you would not manipulate the mirror to change the reflection of what you're seeing. You would go to the cause. You would go to the source. And so I'm inviting you today as causers. I'm inviting you today as powerful spiritual beings. I'm inviting you today as those who are filled with love. That's why it doesn't feel good when you hear about these stories. That's why it doesn't feel good and you want justice and you want to demand justice, because there's something within you that knows that wants to affirm the life and the fact that we all matter. There's something within you that wants to affirm and know that we should all and can all walk these streets safely, that we can all encounter and have encounters with our police officers in love and in joy and in peace. Something within you that wants to affirm and know that our police officers are here to protect and serve, and that's a beautiful thing. And we can love them and they can love us, and they serve from a place of joy. There's something within you that knows that, and that's why it doesn't feel good when you hear these stories. That's why it doesn't feel good when you watch the movie depictions of it. But that not feeling good is not where we stay. That not feeling good, that emotional indicator, is the spirit within you telling you and having a conversation with you that there's something that needs to shift, and we must be the shift. That you cannot change things by simply going out and protesting. That you cannot change things by simply going out and calling for new police officers or a new police chief. You know, sometimes that happens. The police act up, and so now we want a new police chief. Again, we're operating in the world of effects. It's time to go to cause. Because what I've seen and over again is that we have the same results. It's just different names, different faces, different effects, but we have not tapped in and touched into what the cause can be, what the cause is, and then how we can be the new cause. And so I was reminded of a quote from a book that I reference a lot because I love it, and it really speaks to this particular situation. David Hawkins, Power versus Force. And what we've been talking about is power in the sense of love being the ultimate power. Anything else is force. And while force can be addictive to the ego and even attractive to the ego, force always has an end. And David Hawkins says this about power. He says that power appeals to our higher nature, force to our lower nature. He says that force is limited, whereas power is unlimited. And so I was reminded of something that took place in 1993. I grew up in the D.C. area, just outside of D.C. in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I remember, as I'm sure many of you do, that back in the 90s, D.C. was called the murder capital. The amount of homicides in D.C. was outrageous. Most of this was due to the drug wars and the crack epidemic that was going on. And it was really bad. You know, even during that time, the mayor of D.C. was arrested for smoking crack. It was bad, right? It was really bad and very violent. Well, in the summer of '93, about 4,000 meditators came down to D.C. They studied transcendental meditation. And there was a belief and a desire that through meditation, they could decrease the amount of violent crimes by at least 20%. Now that's interesting, right? We're talking about this idea of cause and effect. And here we're introducing a completely different cause. The effect is what we all want. We want to reduce crime. The effect is that we want brothers to be able to walk the street freely and safely. The effect is that we want people to live and not die. The effect is that we don't want gun violence. The effect is that we don't want to talk about homicides. The effect is that we want to lower the murder rate. And so there was a belief that by meditating, a group of people in shifts for about 2 hours each day, that they could stop violence. They could stop guns, stop people from killing each other, stop drug dealers from being drug dealers, right? But what's interesting, and we will post this study on Facebook, the results of the study. What they found is that it was for 6 weeks that they did this. In the first 4 weeks, the violent crimes were reduced by 23% from meditating. A group of people coming together, meditating. Now, why do I know that's true? Well, we just talked about it. Everything is vibration. Everything is actually energy. And what I know to be true is that the energy, the force, the power of love is greater than any other power out there. Right? Whatever the energy, whatever the momentum behind why people were getting killed or why there was homicide or why people believe that they should use guns or have to protect themselves, none of that matters. It can't stand up against the power of love. It can't stand up to that universal force. That is why King was successful. That is why Gandhi was successful. And that is why we will be successful if we choose to operate from the level of cause. Bringing an ending to these illusions, bringing an ending to operating in the world of effects and trying to manipulate what's out there, because we recognize that we are the projectors of reality. We need to manipulate what's in here. If you had a DVD in your DVD player and you were sick of the movie that's playing, you would take the DVD out and change the story. Yes, yes? And so whatever is being projected in your reality, whatever is being projected in our collective reality, it is time for us to put a new DVD in, do something different, find a new cause, be a new cause, and move and master and play this game of life, just as we saw the Transcendental Meditation Group do in DC in '93. And while it would be easy to talk about, well, why we didn't hear more about this, and why aren't they doing this now, and why aren't they doing this in Chicago, and why aren't they doing doesn't matter. We know what's true, and we know how much power we have. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I started to think about it during the Trayvon Martin case, and definitely after the verdict came out with George Zimmerman, that maybe it's time to do some meditation pop-ups all around Brooklyn, to just, get a group of people together, and we make a commitment to 30 days of meditation around peace, 30 days of meditation around this idea that the force of love is greater than anything, and then watch what happens in our individual lives and in the lives of our city, because that's how powerful we are. And as we reverberate out into the lives of our city, it will reverberate out into our country and throughout our world. Are you ready to be causers instead of just pawns? Instead of being moved, instead of being swayed by what's happening out there, recognizing that you have power, recognizing that you are the king and queen of your life. You dictate what happens in your kingdom. Oh my God. On that, I invite everyone to stand. We have come to illusion's end. I'm so grateful and thankful to know that every illusion has an end. But I am more grateful and thankful to know that power is unlimited. I am more grateful and thankful to know that love has no end. I am grateful and thankful to know that love is this universal, all-encompassing force that brings about its agenda easily and effortlessly, without pushing, without forcing its way, but being exactly who it is and changing any environment and any situation, no matter how bleak or how dark it may seem. Mother, Father, God, I am grateful and thankful to be here today, to hear this word and to remember and know that we are causers, to remember and know that every illusion has an end, to remember and know that we no longer have to operate and deal in the realm of effects, but it is time for us to go within, to go back to the source, within us, and from that place, project a new reality. I know that each and every person here in this room and within the sound of my voice is a powerful creator, is a powerful projector, is a powerful focuser of what it is that they are desiring to see in life. Collectively, we have a desire for a world of unity. Collectively, we have a desire for a world that lives in peace. Together, collectively, we have a desire for a world in harmony. Not a world of being the same, but a world of being in harmony. We recognize the difference. We recognize that we look different and we think differently, but we can live together harmoniously. That is our desire. And we recognize that as we focus on that and that alone, you as love, you as the force, the power of the universe that empowers the universe, you are the one that will bring it forth in ways that simply blow our minds. We rest in that reality and we allow it to be today. We let it be today. We take our hands off of the reins. We take our hands off of wanting to control how the thing happens, recognizing that we may be well-intentioned even when we try to control it, but we cannot bring about the desire. We cannot bring about the effects that we desire, except we live in this space of cause. What I know to be true is that well-being abounds and that all is absolutely well. So we choose to sit in the stream of well-being and allow it to carry us into peace. We sit in the stream of well-being and we allow it to carry us into unity. We sit in the stream of well-being and we allow it to carry us into equality for all. We sit in this stream of well-being and we allow it to carry us into true democracy. We sit in the stream of well-being and we allow it to carry us into freedom unending and joy beyond our wildest dreams. For this, Mother, Father, God, I am so very grateful. We lift up our voices and we say amen, Ashe, and so it is. And so it is. Yes, yes.